They mocked my Christmas gifts until the receipts exposed every lie. They say humiliation fades with time, that wounds heal, that laughter doesn't echo forever. They're wrong. Because when people laugh at you while smiling into their wine glasses, when they unwrap your gift and exchange looks like you're invisible, when family decides your worth based on price tags, that kind of betrayal burns slow. And it remembers. This isn't a story about revenge driven by anger. It's about truth. And the day receipts spoke louder than ridicule. Before I continue, please subscribe to my channel to see more interesting stories. Thank you. The room full of laughter. New York City. Christmas Eve in Manhattan glitters differently when you don't belong. I stood in my sister-in-law's penthouse, surrounded by glass walls and quiet judgment. The skyline outside sparkled. Inside, the air felt heavy. Everyone had arrived dressed in wealth. Tailored suits, silk dresses, watches worth more than my rent. I held my gift bags tighter. Are these handmade? Someone whispered behind me. Laughter followed. Soft. Polite. Surgical. I smiled anyway. I had spent months choosing those gifts. Thoughtfully. Intentionally. But when my brother's wife, Lauren, lifted the scarf I'd given her, simple, neutral-toned, folded with care, she paused. Oh, she said. It's cute. Goo. Not beautiful. Not thoughtful. Goo. My brother avoided my eyes. My mother sipped her wine too quickly. Someone joked about supporting small businesses, and the room erupted again. I felt 12 years old. I wanted to explain, to defend myself, to scream that not all value screams luxury. But I didn't. I watched them, and I remembered every face. Because that was the night I realized something important. They weren't laughing at my gifts. They were laughing at me. And they had no idea what I was holding on to. The quiet math of humiliation. Brooklyn, New York. I cried on the subway ride home. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silent tears that slipped down as the train rattled through Brooklyn like it had somewhere better to be. I replayed every comment. Minimalist. So simple. Budget-friendly. They didn't know I'd skipped lunches for weeks. Didn't know I researched ethical brands, local artisans, sustainable sourcing. Didn't care. At home, I placed the empty gift bags on my kitchen table. My apartment was small but warm. Honest. Every object inside it had a story. I opened my laptop. Receipts filled the screen. Not prices, proof. Proof of quality. Proof of intention. Proof that I hadn't been careless. I'd been deliberate. And that's when the idea arrived. Soft at first. Dangerous. What if I didn't defend myself with words? What if I let facts do the talking? I closed the laptop. Christmas wasn't over yet. The invitation they didn't expect. Westchester County, New York. 2 days later, I sent the message. Hosting a late Christmas dinner. Small, intimate. Would love to see everyone. Lauren responded with a polite thumbs up. My brother said, You sure? I smiled at my phone. Oh, I was sure. I spent the next 72 hours preparing, not just food, but atmosphere. Candles. Music. Seating. I curated the evening like a director setting a final act. And quietly, I printed something else. Receipts. Certificates. Brand histories. I didn't plan to embarrass them. I planned to educate. They arrived skeptical, dressed down, expecting leftovers and awkward apologies. Instead, they found elegance. Handmade ceramics. Local wine. Linen napkins. Soft jazz humming through the room. Lauren blinked. This place looks different. I poured the wine. Wait till dessert, I said. And somewhere inside me, the hurt began to harden into control. The first crack. Same night. Dinner unfolded beautifully. Too beautifully. Compliments started slipping out. Unplanned. Uncomfortable. This wine is amazing. Where did you get these plates? Wow. This meal tastes expensive. I smiled and answered simply. Local. Independent. Thoughtful. Then came dessert. I placed a small envelope beside each plate. What's this? my mother asked. Just something I wanted to share, I said softly. They opened them. Receipts. Not totals, origins. Names of artisans. Production methods. Limited runs. Ethical sourcing. Real value. Lauren's smile froze. My brother read slower. The room went silent. I didn't gloat. I let the truth breathe. And for the first time all week, they weren't laughing. When silence gets loud. Cliffhanger. I didn't realize, Lauren finally said. No one looked at me. They looked at the paper. At the proof. At themselves. I cleared the plates calmly, heart pounding like a drumline. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt steady. Seen. But then my uncle spoke. So, he said lightly, are you saying we were wrong? I turned and smiled. I'm saying, I replied, this isn't even the full story. Their eyes lifted, because what they didn't know yet was that the biggest receipt hadn't been printed. It was still waiting, and it was about to change everything. The receipt they didn't ask for. Westchester County, New York. I didn't rush. That was the key. I poured more wine. Let the room breathe. Let the discomfort stretch until it became unbearable. People reveal themselves when silence gets too loud. You always had good taste, my mother offered, trying to stitch dignity back into the moment. I nodded, not correcting her. Then I reached for my phone. There's one more thing, I said casually. This receipt isn't about money. I connected my phone to the TV. The screen lit up with a familiar logo, Harrison and Company. Luxury Consultants. Lauren leaned forward. That's my firm. Yes, I said. I know. The presentation began. Slides. Case studies. Brand placements. My voice stayed calm. I consult for independent artisans, help them enter luxury markets without losing integrity. Harrison and Company acquired 3 of my clients this year. My brother swallowed. Lauren's jaw tightened. You never mentioned this, she said. You never asked. The screen faded to black. The room felt smaller. Because the truth wasn't loud. It was professional. Recognition without applause. Flashback. Chicago, Illinois. I didn't fall into this work. I built it. Years earlier in Chicago, I worked from a studio apartment with a borrowed desk and a second-hand laptop. While others chased logos, I chased craftsmanship. I sat with leatherworkers, textile artists, ceramicists who refused mass production. They taught me value before price. Back then, my family called it a phase. Lauren once laughed over brunch. Luxury is about exclusivity, she said. Not sentiment. I smiled then too. Because while she climbed corporate ladders, I built bridges. Quiet ones. By the time Harrison and Company started acquiring my clients, they didn't realize they were also buying my philosophy. I was never invited to their parties. I was too busy setting the table. The uncomfortable question. Westchester County. So, my uncle said again, forcing a laugh, does this mean those gifts were expensive? I shook my head. No, I said. It means they were valuable. Lauren folded her arms. You could have just told us. I met her eyes. And risk sounding defensive? Or worse, begging for respect. She looked away. My brother finally spoke. Why now, Evie? I exhaled. Because you laughed, I said. And you never apologized. That landed harder than any receipt. No one interrupted. Because they knew. And for the first time, I realized something else. This wasn't about revenge. This was about alignment. And theirs was cracking. The call that changed the mood. Same night, my phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen and paused. Sorry, I said. I need to take this. I stepped onto the balcony. Cold air kissed my face. Evelyn, the voice said. It's Marcus from Harrison. Lauren watched through the glass. We're finalizing the acquisition, Marcus continued. The board wants you to lead the artisan integration. Global role. New York-based. I smiled. When do we announce? After the holidays. I ended the call and stayed outside for a moment. When I returned, Lauren was standing. Was that? Yes, I said gently. Your firm. Her mouth opened. Closed. For once, she didn't have the upper hand. The shift. Cliffhanger. The evening ended early. Too many truths. Too little room. Coats were gathered. Goodbyes rushed. At the door, Lauren paused. I misjudged you, she said quietly. I nodded. I know. After they left, I cleaned alone. Plates. Glasses. Evidence of a reckoning. But the real shift hadn't happened yet. Because what no one knew was that the global role came with authority, decision-making power, and influence over partnerships, including one very specific department. Christmas had given them clarity. New Year's was about to give them consequences. The announcement nobody expected. New York City. The email went out on January 3rd. Subject: Organizational Update, Artisan Integration Division. I was standing in line for coffee in Soho when my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages stacked faster than I could read them. Congrats. Did you know about this? You're leading the division. I opened the attachment. There it was. My name. Evelyn Carter, Global Director, Artisan and Ethical Luxury Integration.
No headline. No fanfare.
Just authority. By noon, LinkedIn was buzzing. Industry blogs picked it up by evening. Quiet admiration replaced loud skepticism. At 6:42 p.m., Lauren texted. Lauren, we need to talk. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Me, of course. Professionally or personally? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared.
Neither response came.
Because this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a recalibration. The meeting room with glass walls. Midtown Manhattan. The conference room smelled like polished wood and ambition. Lauren sat 3 seats away from me, posture perfect, expression unreadable. She hadn't known I'd be there, not like this. Marcus introduced me. This division exists because of Evelyn's work, he said. She'll have final say on artisan partnerships and brand ethics. Lauren's pen froze mid-note. The presentation began.
Chats.
Values. Direction. Then came the slide titled Realignment. Departments shifted. Responsibilities reassigned. Lauren's team, her department, moved under my oversight.
No demotion.
No drama. Just structure. She raised her hand. Will there be changes to leadership autonomy? I met her gaze. Only where integrity requires it. The room nodded. The gavel had fallen. Without a sound. Power doesn't announce itself. Flashback and present. San Francisco, California. I remembered San Francisco years ago, pitching to a room that barely looked up from their phones. One investor laughed. Ethical luxury doesn't scale. I didn't argue. I built. Now, years later, those same principles were the backbone of a global strategy. After the meeting, Lauren approached me privately. I didn't know you were this influential, she said. I smiled softly. I didn't know you needed me to be loud. Her shoulders dropped. I'm sorry, she added. For Christmas. I studied her face. The apology wasn't performative, but it was late. I accept, I said. And I remember. Those two things can coexist. The dinner table turns. Suburban Connecticut. Another family dinner. Another test. This time, the tone had changed. Compliments flowed too easily now. Pride replaced mockery. Did you hear about Evelyn? She's doing amazing things. So impressive. I smiled politely. But something felt hollow. Respect earned only after recognition isn't respect. It's alignment with power. Midway through dessert, my mother reached for my hand. I should have defended you, she said quietly. That one mattered. I know, I replied. Outside, snow fell softly. Inside, something thawed. But the final balance hadn't been struck yet. Because the greatest receipt wasn't professional. It was personal. And it was coming due. The invitation. Cliffhanger. 2 weeks later, I received an email from Lauren. Subject: Annual Partner Gala, RSVP requested. Black tie. Industry elite. Press invited. At the bottom of the invitation, featuring a keynote on ethical luxury integration, delivered by me. I stared at the screen, because that gala wasn't just a celebration. It was a stage, and Lauren had no idea what I planned to unveil there. Not vengeance, not embarrassment, just the full, undeniable truth. With receipts. The night the lights came on. Manhattan, Grand Ballroom, Upper East Side. The ballroom glowed like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers, black tuxedos, silk gowns whispering across marble floors. Cameras flashed as if truth itself were being hunted. I stood behind the curtain, adjusting my dress, simple, structured, unapologetic. Not loud. Intentional. Lauren stood near the stage, greeting partners with practiced warmth. When she saw me, her smile faltered, just slightly. She hadn't expected me to look this composed. The host announced my name. Applause followed. Measured. Respectful. I stepped into the light. And somewhere in the crowd, I felt it, the shift. This wasn't their world anymore. It was mine too. The speech that wasn't about money. Same night. I didn't start with numbers. I started with a story. Last Christmas, I said, voice steady, I gave gifts that made people laugh. Soft murmurs rippled through the room. Not because they were cheap, I continued, but because they were misunderstood. A slide appeared behind me. Artisans at work. Hands stained with dye. Fire-kissed clay. Worn tools. These people taught me that luxury isn't about price, I said. It's about intention, integrity, and respect. I paused. And when we mock what we don't understand, we reveal more about ourselves than the object. The room was silent now.
No laughter.
Only listening. Lauren stood frozen. The receipts in plain sight. Same night. The next slide appeared. Receipts. Not totals, timelines. Partnership origins. Acquisition dates. Value creation. I didn't point fingers. I let the data speak. Every brand we celebrate tonight, I said, was once dismissed as small. The camera panned. Faces shifted. Recognition dawned. This division exists, I continued, because someone believed before it was profitable. I smiled. Believe better. Applause rose, slow, then thunderous. Not for me. For truth. And Lauren? She didn't clap. She couldn't. When applause feels like exposure. Backstage. After the speech, the press circled. Questions flew. Was that personal? Are you redefining luxury? Who inspired this? I answered calmly. Everyone who is underestimated. Lauren approached once the crowd thinned. You didn't have to include that part, she said. I didn't include names, I replied. She swallowed. That was worse. I nodded. Truth often is. Her power had been built on perception, and perception had shifted, not because I attacked, but because I revealed. The quiet collapse. Weeks later, New York City. The fallout was subtle. That's how real consequences arrive. Articles questioned company culture. Panels debated elitism.
Bronze demanded transparency.
Lauren wasn't fired. She was moved out of public-facing leadership into advisory.
No scandal. No headline.
Just distance from the spotlight. She texted me once. Lauren, I finally understand. I read it.
Didn't reply.
Because understanding isn't the same as repair. And the final receipt, the most significant one, was still unpaid. The one receipt that couldn't be printed. Upstate New York. I spent a weekend alone in a cabin upstate, surrounded by snow and silence.
No emails. No headlines. No applause.
Just reflection. Because the truth is, the greatest cost I paid wasn't financial, it was emotional. Years of shrinking myself so others could feel tall. Accepting laughter as currency for belonging. That was the receipt no one ever saw. I lit a fire and reread an old notebook. Notes from my earliest days, dreams scribbled in margins, doubts crossed out but never erased. I realized something then. I didn't need them to understand anymore. I had already outgrown the room where I was once humiliated. And growth doesn't require witnesses. The apology that finally landed. Brooklyn, New York. The knock came on a Sunday afternoon. Lauren stood at my door.
No designer code. No armor.
I'm not here as a colleague, she said. Or family. I waited. I'm here as someone who learned too late that arrogance costs more than humility. She handed me a box. Inside was the scarf I'd given her. Perfectly preserved. I never wore it, she admitted. I didn't deserve to. I looked at her for a long moment. You didn't laugh because of the gift, I said. You laughed because you needed to feel superior. Tears filled her eyes. I know. This time, the apology wasn't late. It was earned. What forgiveness actually looks like. Same day. Forgiveness isn't dramatic. It doesn't arrive with music swelling or credits rolling. It's quiet. I forgive you, I said, not for her, but for myself. Lauren exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. But forgiveness didn't mean access, or intimacy, or forgetting. It meant release. She left lighter.
So, did I.
That was the moment I understood. Poetic justice isn't about watching someone fall. It's about refusing to stay where you were pushed down. A new Christmas tradition. 1 year later, Seattle, Washington. The following Christmas looked nothing like the last.
No pentoses.
No performance. Just a long wooden table in Seattle, surrounded by artisans, friends, and people who saw value before validation. We exchanged gifts, simple, meaningful, handmade, intentional. Receipts weren't hidden. They weren't needed. Laughter filled the room. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't wound. And I realized this was the wealth I'd always been building toward. When the receipts spoke louder than laughter. Final payoff. A year after that infamous Christmas, I received a message from a young designer. They laughed at my work, she wrote. But your story gave me courage. I smiled. That was the final receipt. Not paper. Not proof. Not applause. Impact. They laughed at my cheap Christmas gifts until the receipts told the truth. But the truth that mattered most? I was never cheap. I was priceless. Thank you for listening to my story. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my videos. Thank you.